Hi and welcome to this new section. In this section, you're going to learn about two very important concepts in programming. These are functions and conditionals. So functions are used to keep your code more organized. So think of functions as small chunks of code, which together build a program. That is what you need to know for now. Functions are useful for other things as well, but you'll understand it as you build the real-world programs. In the next video, I'll write a function, but that is just a standalone function, so it doesn't interact with other parts of the code. It's just a function. But when you see the large applications later on, you'll see how the function integrates with other parts of the code. So that's a good thing of creating real-world programs. That is how you learn how to do programming in real life. And that's about functions. And then in this section, you will also learn conditionals, which basically are used to have your program make decisions. So if that number is greater than that, do this. If it's not greater, then do this other thing. That's basically the idea, but you'll see it in action. So this is about the introduction of this section. I'll see you in the other lecture. Hi again, in this video you'll learn how to create a function in Python and how to use that function. So let me go ahead and create a script. Let me name this my function.py. And let's go ahead and create the function. Creating a function will always begin with the def keyword, which means define. And that is followed by the name of the function. So you need to give your function a name. Let me name this minutes to hours. And as you may guess already, what I'm creating is a function that will convert minutes to hours. So you create the procedure on how to convert minutes to hours, and then you can call that procedure. So you can call that function. You can give that function any values when you call it, and the function will produce an output depending on the value and depending on the formula, on the procedures that you write in here. So let's go ahead and do that. Minutes to hours. Now functions, normally they have some input and they produce some output. The input goes inside these brackets in here. In our case, the input could be minutes. So this is just a variable. You can give it any name that you want. You can give it any name that you want for the function name as well. So the input is minutes and then the output will be hours, but you don't write the output here. Here what to do, you always use a colon. Press enter and that will be auto indented. So as you see, the functions, everything that you write below the first line of the function definition is indented, and every line after that. So the def keyword, the name of the function, the input, and here we write the body of the function. What we want to do is let's say variable hours equals to minutes divided by 60. That should give us the hours. Note that if you are on Python 2, you want to do 60.0, because if you do that, you'll get an integer as an output and not a float. So in Python 2, you have to explicitly pass a float when you do division to get a number, to get a float with decimal points. I'm in Python 3, so I don't need to put 60.0 there. And yeah, this is a simple function, so this is what the function will perform, and then the last line of the function is normally a return keyword. So notice that these are reserved keywords, def and return. And what I want to return is, well, guess what? The output, which is hours. So that's the idea. We are getting minutes. The user will input a value for that later when we call a function, and then minutes will be divided by 60, and that operation, that number will be stored in the hours variable, which is a variable that exists only inside the function. So this is called a local variable. If you call it outside the function, it will not work, but we'll cover that later. And so then we return the value of that variable. Now I'll save this and open the terminal make some space there, and let me execute the script. You get nothing. The reason for that is because what you did here is you just define a blueprint. You are not using that blueprint. So what you do next is you need to go ahead and use that blueprint. So which means you need to call that function. So backspace to go here to unindent. Unindenting means that you are done with the function definition. So when you start a new line, like here, that means you are not writing inside the function. And so to call a function, what you do is you just call the name of the function, minutes to hours, and then you open brackets, and then inside brackets you pass a value that you want to use as input. So let's say you want 70 minutes, you want to convert them to hours. Save the script, go and execute. Again, you will not get any output, but let's see. As I said, you won't get any output. So why is that? Well, that's because you didn't perform a print operation there. You didn't call a print function. So what you do is you do print. So open brackets, close brackets, and inside the brackets goes the function call. Save your script, go here, execute, and yeah, you get the hours. 70 minutes is equal to 1.1666 hours. So it's important to know that this value here, this is just a number. So you can see that by doing type and execute. Oh, sorry, I didn't print it out. And so this is a float number, so just a number. The function gets an input and it generates an output, which is defined by the hours variable. So whatever is stored in the hours variable, that is the value that the function will output. And yeah, you can do things like, you can use this output to do other operations. Let's say you want to add 10 hours there and you want to print that output, so expect this to be 11.1666, so on. And of course, now in your script you can add more functions if you like, like that, like seconds to hours, you pass seconds there, and here seconds, return hours, and so on. And of course this works separately, so you can say print seconds to hours and pass there. Actually we have to change this because this would be divided by 3600, and let's say this number of seconds, execute, and you get 2.0 hours. And you also get the other output in here, and this one here. Now, something important to know is that these are custom functions. And this one here is also a function, but this is a built-in function. So custom functions are functions created by you, and built-in functions are functions that are created by someone else. So in this case, print is created by Python authors, and print also has its own code, but it's more a low-level code, and it's actually written in C, so you won't be able to see the code for print. And yeah, this is an introduction to functions. In the next lecture, I'll show you some more advanced features of functions. So let's see you there. Alright, in the previous lecture, I showed you the syntax of a function definition and the syntax of how to call a function. So this is the basic representation of a function. But there are some more things that you can add to a function. So that's what you're going to learn in this lecture. And I'll make this simple. I'll delete this. And here we are. And so here we have only one parameter. So this is called a function parameter. However, you can have more than one parameters for a function. Let's say seconds. So in this case, I allow the user to enter both minutes and seconds and then the program will calculate the hours based on that. So basically we want to add seconds here, seconds divided by 3600. So yeah, I hope I'm fine with the math here. So minutes divided by 60 give you hours, and then seconds divided by the number of seconds in 1 hour gives you the hours. And yeah, we add them up and we return hours. Therefore, let me delete this 10 here. In this case, when you call that kind of function with 2 parameters, you'd want to pass 2 values, 60 let's say and 300 for seconds. Save, execute, and you get 1.25. And that's how you can add multiple parameters to your function and multiple values. Now if you don't pass a value there, one of the parameters, and you execute, you will get a type error. This is saying type error minutes to hours is missing one required positional argument, which is seconds. So you are not allowed to miss a value for a positional argument. So seconds is a positional argument which you need to pass in the function call. So these are referred to as arguments when you use them here, when you're talking about function call, and they are referred to as parameters when you pass them in the function definition. So parameters, and when you're talking about function call, you refer to them as arguments, and this is the value of the argument. And so positional arguments need to have a value passed in here. But default arguments don't need a value, and a default argument is when you use something like that. 70, and let's pass 300 in here. Execute. So syntax error, non-default argument follows default argument. The non-default argument here is this one. So positional arguments, such as seconds, are also referred to as non-default arguments. So the non-default argument second follows the default argument. That gives you a syntax error in Python, because Python will get confused when you pass this 300 here. So it doesn't know whether you pass it for this one or for this one here. Therefore, you need to pass the default argument after the non-default argument. So seconds and minutes. Now if you save the script and go here, this time you'll get a correct output, so 1.25. So let me summarize again what happened here. We have a non-default argument and a default argument which has a default value. Therefore, when you call the function and you pass only one value, Python knows that you're passing that value for the non-default argument. And for the default argument, Python will use the value of 70. However, if you pass another value there, let's say 200 minutes, save the script, execute, you'll get another output, because Python this time used the value of 200 for minutes instead of its default value. So when you don't pass a value, Python uses default value. When you pass it, Python uses what you passed in the function call. So this is useful when you create functions where some of the arguments will have a value that is not very likely to change very often. Something else about functions before I close this lecture. You don't always need a return keyword in here. You can also do, let's say, print hours, and then you don't need a print statement there. You just do that, execute, and you get the same output. However, note that, if you do +10 now and you execute, you'll get an error, because it says non-type and int, so unsupported operand type for non-type and integer, which means the non-type is this one here. So this is not a number, and you can see that by doing print, so print the type of that function, of that output. And you'll see that this is a non-type. So the function doesn't produce a number when you use print. So bottom line is, when it comes to what the function does, you have two types of functions. You have functions that generate an output, and you have functions that perform some procedure. So this was an example of a function that performs some procedures. In this case, what this function did was it calculated hours and it printed hours. It didn't return an output. And other cases might be like, you know, when you create a file, so you process some files, you create a text file, you write some output in that text file, and you don't need a return keyword in that case. But we will see that later when we cover file handling in Python. Most of the time though, you will have to return a value here. So that's the idea. This is about this lecture, and I'll talk to you later. Hi, here is one more lecture about functions, and this one is in a more practical view, because what we're going to do is we're going to save that. We're going to look at the program that we built in the previous lecture. Sorry, in the previous section. So this simple program. Note that these are not the real life applications that this course covers. So these are just small snippets of code. Don't confuse this with the real life applications. We'll cover 10 real world applications later in the course. So in this program, what this did was it asks you for the age. Let me guess. That's not exactly my age, but anyway, 90. So this will print out your age plus 40. So 90 in this case. And what I want to do in this lecture is I want to organize this code better by putting this inside a function. So this will help you understand functions, how they are used in a more real life situation. So the function basically had three components, and that was the input, the body of the function, so the operations that the function performs, and then the output. So in this case, we are going to somehow get the input from this user prompt, and then this will be the body of our function, and then we will output this one in here, the new age variable. So let's go ahead and define a function here. Define age foo. Let's keep it like that. And we're going to get some age input there. And there goes this line. So the new age will be equal to the input that the function will pass in here. So we convert that input to a float, and then we add 50 to that, and then we return new age. So once you have defined a blueprint, so to say, once you have defined your function, then you want to prompt the user for a value, so that you have a value ready there to pass it to the function call later here, which will be like print age foo age goes there. Now don't confuse this age variable with this one here. They just happen to be the same, but these are not the same because this is a local variable. Well, this one in here is a local global variable. Sorry, a global variable, local variable. So what happened is when Python executes this script, it goes line by line. So it reads the first line, second, third, and it knows it's sort of records in the memory this kind of blueprint. But anyway, this is just a blueprint, so it will not output anything. Then it goes to the next line. This is empty. Okay, go to the next line. Age equals to input. We have an input function which creates a user prompt, so it prompts the user this message, and then the user submits a value, and that value is stored in the age variable. So this is a global variable. It doesn't have to do with this one here. And then what happens is we call the function, age foo, and inside that function we pass the value stored in this age global variable. So let's say the user passed 40. 40 will be passed in here. So 40 here, which means this 40 will be passed to this age argument, so to this variable. So the local variable now will get a value of 40, and that value will be put in here. So float 40 plus 50 equals to 90, and that will return 90. And so that 90 will replace this thing in here, and Python will print 90.0 in the command prompt in the terminal here. Let me try that. Enter age 40, 90.0. And yes, basically that's how you integrate user input with functions. That's about this lecture. I'll talk to you later. Hey, hello again. In this lecture we're going to learn about conditionals. What is a conditional? Well, a conditional is a block of code which perform different actions depending on whether a given conditional evaluates to true or false. So let's go ahead and create a conditional in Python. I'll create a file, conditionals.py, and let me create a conditional block. And first of all, let me create a variable. Let's say a equals to 5, and here I'll create a conditional block. This block, what this will do is it will perform an action if a is less than 5, and another action if a is equal or greater than 5. So let me create that. If this is our conditional starts, if a, let's say less than 5, print, let's say less than 5. Press enter. And if you want to perform more actions with this condition, so when this condition is true, this will be executed. But if you want to perform more actions, you can add them there. If not, then you can go to the next check. So that would be else. So you have a colon here, a colon there. So else print equal or greater than 5. Let me execute this. And we get equal or greater than 5. So why did we get that? Well, because, you know, if a is less than 5, which is not, so this evaluates to false, and that means this will not be executed. So Python will skip this line and it will go to the next one. This next line says else, so else means if this is not true, this will be executed. So equal or greater than 5. So in this case, if a is not less than 5, then there's no other option but a is either equal or greater than 5. So that's an if and else conditional block. However, if you want to add more conditionals there, you want to use elif. So let's do that. The first two lines stay the same. If a is less than 5, print less than 5. Elif a is equal to 5, print equal to 5. Else print greater than 5. Save and execute, and you get equal to 5. If a was 6, you'd get greater than 5, and if a was 3, you'd get less than 5. And that's a conditional block in Python. And yeah, try to get familiar with the syntax, and in the next lecture I'm going to incorporate a conditional with this block of code. So see you there. Hi again, you should be able to remember this program which we built in one of the previous lectures. What this does is it has this function definition which gets the age and then it adds 50 to the age and then returns age plus 50 here, and then you ask the user to enter some input and then you pass that input to the program and then the program produces, you know, the age that the user submits plus 50. That's the idea. So let's say 40 and you get 90.0. Now the user may also want to pass 200, for example, for the age, and you get 250, which is not very realistic, let's be honest. And here is where you want to make your program more intelligent. And here is where you use a conditional. So slowly you are seeing how you can use features of a programming language to make some real programs. This is not yet a real world program because, you know, this is depending on a command line interface. This is not very friendly to execute programs this way, but the logic is going towards a real world program. So let's go ahead and improve the program so that if the user submits an age of, let's say, more than 150, you will not calculate 150 plus 50. Instead, you'll print out a message that says it's not possible to have this age or something like that. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. This is a function definition. Now you shouldn't incorporate the conditional inside the function definition. You know, it's good to leave functions simple as it is now, so it gets an input and it calculates the output. And so you can incorporate the conditional when you call the function in here. So let me delete that. The function definition, and then you ask for input, and then instead of calling the function right away, you first want to check to evaluate the input that the user submits. So let's check that. If age is less than 150, that is the time when you want to call the function age. So you're passing age in there. Else, so if it's not less than 150, you want to print out a message saying something like, how is that possible? So let me pass the print here as well. So we're printing the output. And let me execute, but I expect to get an error here. But it's good to take things step by step. Enter your age. Let me enter 1990 first. And yeah, you get an error which says type error. Unorderable types string is less than integer. So basically Python cannot compare a string object with an integer. And this is in line 7, which is this one here. So this is a string, this is an integer. The reason is that, you know, as I have mentioned before, Python loads user input as strings. So age will be a string data type. So you want to convert that into an integer or a float. It's good to convert it to a float. You can either do that here or you can do it here. I'll do it here, like that. But if you do it there, then you can remove that from there. So you don't need to convert age twice to a float. You know, you can convert it at the source in here, and then you can use it directly everywhere in your code. So this is good when you're using this input more than once in your code. You can convert it directly in here, float. Save, try again, and you get the output. So 99 plus 50, 149. And let me try again to enter 151, which is above the threshold. And yeah, you get how is that possible. And yeah, that's the idea. This is how you use conditional blocks. If your imagination is good, then you can go ahead and improve this program even further. So there's always something to improve. Give it a try, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks.